The gentle morning light poured through the windows of room 302 at Westfield High School as 16-year-old Maya Thompson slipped quietly into her seat in the back row. She tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear and pulled out her worn notebook, flipping past pages filled with complex equations and intricate fractal patterns that no one else had ever seen. Maya had perfected the art of being invisible, and that's exactly how she wanted it. The bell rang, echoing through the classroom as Mr. Richards strode in, his polished shoes clicking against the linoleum floor. He was a tall man with salt and pepper, hair and wire-rimmed glasses that he often peered over when addressing students he found disappointing. His reputation as the toughest math teacher in school was well-earned, with a particular talent for identifying weaknesses and exposing them publicly. "Good morning, class," he announced, surveying the room with a critical eye. "Pop quiz. Let's see who actually did the reading." A collective groan rippled through the room as students shuffled papers and straightened in their seats. Maya kept her expression neutral, though inside she felt nothing but calm. These quizzes were never a challenge, but she had learned the hard way to keep that fact to herself. Her mind drifted back to Carson Middle School 3 years ago. She had been so excited to show her math teacher the solution to a problem that had stumped the class. The praise had been nice at first, but then came the isolation, the whispers in the hallway. Brain freak. Teacher's pet. Show off. By the time her family moved to Westfield, Maya had developed a new strategy. Blend in, be average, be forgettable. Mr. Richards passed out the quiz papers with the efficiency of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. When he reached Maya's desk, he barely glanced at her. She was just another face in the sea of students to him. Not a troublemaker, not a star pupil. Just there. "You have 15 minutes, he announced, setting the timer on his desk with a sharp click. Maya looked down at the problems. Linear equations. She could solve these in her sleep. Her pencil hovered over the paper as she calculated how many to get right. Too many correct answers would draw attention. Too few would risk getting called in for extra help. She settled on 85%, good enough for a solid B, not remarkable enough to stand out. As she carefully worked through the problems, deliberately making small errors here and there, her mind wandered to the real math she did at home. Last night, she had been exploring non-Euclidean geometry, losing herself in the beautiful complexity of mathematical systems that defied ordinary space. Her parents didn't understand her passion, but they supported it in their own way, buying her advanced textbooks when they could afford them, though they often exchanged worried glances when they thought she wasn't looking. "Time's up," Mr. Richards called, snapping Maya back to the present. "Pass your papers forward." As the quizzes made their way to the front, Mr. Richards began writing on the whiteboard. "Today we continue with quadratic equations. I expect everyone to pay attention. Some of you clearly need the help." Maya dutifully copied the examples into her notebook, though she had mastered this material years ago. Next to her notes, she absent-mindedly began sketching a complex fractal pattern, her pencil moving almost of its own accord. The repetitive nature of the design was soothing, each branching pattern following precise mathematical rules while creating something that looked almost organic. "Miss Thompson." Maya's head snapped up to find Mr. Richards staring at her, along with 27 pairs of curious eyes. Her cheeks flushed hot with embarrassment. "Sorry, what was the question?" she asked quietly. Mr. Richards' eyebrows arched high above his glasses. "I asked if you could tell us the value of x in the equation I just worked through, but clearly you have more important things to do than pay attention in my class." A few students snickered. In the front row, Zach Chen, the unofficial math star of their grade, turned to give her a pitying look. Maya glanced at the board, quickly taking in the equation. "X equals -4 or +2, she answered, keeping her voice deliberately unsure, as if she had made a lucky guess. Mr. Richards seemed momentarily surprised but recovered quickly. "Correct. Though I suggest you demonstrate that you deserve to be in this class by paying attention." He turned back to the board, and Maya returned to her careful balancing act, participating just enough to avoid trouble, but never enough to draw real notice. When the lunch bell rang, she gathered her things slowly, letting the rush of students flow around her like water around a stone. She had just zipped her backpack when Mr. Richards called out to her. "Maya, a moment, please." Her stomach tightened as she approached his desk. Had he noticed her deliberate mistakes on the quiz, or caught a glimpse of the advanced math hidden in her notebook? "Yes, Mr. Richards?" she asked, keeping her eyes fixed on the geometric paperweight sitting on his desk. "Your quiz from last week," he said, sliding a paper toward her. B-. "Not bad, but I noticed something interesting." Maya held her breath. "You got all the hard problems right, but missed the easy ones." His fingers tapped the desk rhythmically, almost as if you wanted to get exactly 7 questions wrong. Maya shrugged, trying to look confused. "I guess I overthought the simple ones." Mr. Richards studied her for a long moment, and Maya felt as if he could somehow see through the careful disguise she had constructed. But then he just sighed and waved her away. "Pay more attention in class, Ms. Thompson. You have potential, but you won't get anywhere if you're doodling instead of learning." Maya nodded and slipped out of the classroom, relief washing over her. He suspected something was off, but he hadn't figured out what. Not yet, anyway. The cafeteria buzzed with conversation and laughter as Maya found her usual spot at the end of a table occupied by a group of quiet kids who stuck together mainly because none of them fit elsewhere. They weren't friends exactly, but they had an unspoken agreement to save seats for each other and occasionally share notes. "Hey," Lena greeted her without looking up from her book. Beside her, Paul nodded while continuing to eat his sandwich. Maya returned the greeting and pulled out her lunch. As she ate, she overheard Zach at the neighboring table loudly explaining a math concept to his friends with the confidence of someone who knew he was the smartest person in the room. "It's actually really simple," he was saying. "That's why I'm going to the state math competition. Mr. Richards says I have a real shot at winning." Maya had seen the flyers for the competition. For a brief moment, she had allowed herself to imagine entering, showing what she could really do. But then she remembered Carson Middle School, the whispers, the isolation. She took another bite of her sandwich and pushed the thought away. After school, Maya walked home alone, taking the longer route, through the park to avoid the main streets where groups of students traveled together, talking and laughing. The autumn air was crisp, and fallen leaves crunched beneath her feet. This was her favorite time of day when she could be completely herself, her mind free to wander through complex mathematical landscapes without worrying about hiding. At home, Maya headed straight to her room, a small space made smaller by the bookshelves crammed with advanced textbooks and notebooks filled with her work. Her desk faced the window, overlooking the backyard with its single maple tree, now brilliant with red and gold leaves. She opened her laptop, an old model that sometimes struggled to run the mathematical modeling software she used, but it was the best her parents could afford. Her father, a warehouse worker, and her mother, a part-time nurse's aide, didn't have much extra money, but they never complained when Maya asked for books or supplies for her projects. A notification popped up on her screen, an email from an online forum where advanced math enthusiasts discussed problems too complex for typical high school or even college courses. Someone had responded to her solution to a differential equation she had posted the night before under her username MathMystery16. "Brilliant approach," the comment read. "Are you a graduate student? Your insight into this problem suggests a deep understanding of theoretical mathematics." Maya smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. Here, in this anonymous online space, she didn't have to hide. She could shine as brightly as she wanted, engaging with minds that challenged and respected her without knowing she was just a high school junior working at her secondhand desk. She began typing a response, explaining her thought process and asking about an extension to the problem she had been considering. This was her real classroom, her true education. The hours slipped by as she lost herself in the work, forgetting about Mr. Richards and his suspicions, about Zach and his proud declarations, about all the years of carefully making herself smaller, to fit into spaces that were never designed for someone like her. When her mother called her for dinner, Maya reluctantly closed her laptop. Someday, she thought, she wouldn't have to hide anymore. Someday she would find a place where her mind could be fully seen and accepted. But for now, in the halls of Westfield High, average was safe. Average meant no one looked too closely. Average meant no whispers followed her down the hallway. Maya nodded mutely and went to collect her notebook from his desk. As she reached for it, Mr. Richards placed his hand on the cover, stopping her. "We should talk," he said quietly. "After school, perhaps?" It wasn't really a question. Maya nodded again and took her notebook when he released it. The rest of the day passed in a blur. In her other classes, Maya went through the motions, taking notes and answering questions when called upon, but her mind was elsewhere. Word had spread quickly. By lunchtime, she noticed people looking at her differently, whispering as she passed. Some seemed impressed, others wary, as if her intelligence was something contagious or dangerous. Lena found her in the cafeteria, sitting alone at their usual table. "That was amazing," she said, sliding onto the bench across from Maya. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" Maya poked at her lunch without appetite. "It's not a big deal." "Not a big deal? Maya, you solved a problem that Mr. Richards probably couldn't solve himself." "I don't want to talk about it," Maya said flatly. The last thing she needed was more attention. Lena studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, but just so you know, I think it's cool. Really cool." By the time the final bell rang, Maya's stomach was in knots. She made her way slowly to Mr. Richards' classroom, dreading whatever conversation awaited her. Would he accuse her of cheating somehow? Or worse, would he want to parade her abilities in front of others? Competitions, advanced classes, all the things that would mark her as different? She paused outside the door, taking a deep breath to steady herself, then knocked softly. "Come in," Mr. Richards called. Maya entered to find him sitting at his desk, reading what appeared to be her most recent quiz. He looked up as she approached, his expression thoughtful. "Please sit down," he said, gesturing to a chair beside his desk. Maya sat, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "I think we need to have an honest conversation, Ms. Thompson," Mr. Richards began, setting the quiz aside. "How long have you been pretending to be an average student?" The directness of the question caught Maya off guard. She opened her mouth to deny it, then closed it again. What was the point? "Since we moved here," she admitted. "About 2 years. And before that?" Maya stared at her hands. I used to let people see what I could do. It didn't go well." Mr. Richards nodded slowly. "Kids can be cruel to those who are different." "It wasn't just the kids," Maya said, surprising herself with her honesty. "Teachers treated me differently too, like I was some kind of, I don't know, science experiment. Look at the math prodigy. Let's see what she can do." I hated it. "So you decided to hide instead." "It wasn't a question. It was easier," Maya said simply. Mr. Richards leaned back in his chair, studying her with new interest. "Do your parents know about your abilities?" Maya nodded. "They try to understand, but they don't really get why I'd want to hide it. My dad thinks I should be proud." "Your father has a point," Mr. Richards said. "What you can do. It's remarkable." "Maya, truly remarkable." Maya shrugged uncomfortably. Compliments made her nervous now. They were often followed by expectations she didn't want to fulfill. "I owe you an apology," Mr. Richards continued, surprising her. "I put you on the spot today in a way that was inappropriate. I suspected you were holding back. Your mistake patterns were too consistent to be accidental. But I shouldn't have forced you to reveal yourself that way." The apology was unexpected enough that Maya looked up, meeting his eyes directly for the first time. "Why did you?" Mr. Richards sighed, removing his glasses and rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Frustration, partly. I've been teaching for 27 years, and I pride myself on recognizing potential in my students. The thought that I had missed something so significant—" He shook his head. "But that's no excuse." He replaced his glasses and leaned forward. "The question now is, what do we do moving forward?" Maya tensed. "What do you mean?" "I mean that Continuing to pretend you're an average student would be a waste of your extraordinary gifts, but I also understand your reluctance to stand out. I just want to be normal, Maya said quietly. Mr. Richards smiled slightly. Maya, there's nothing normal about what you can do. And that's not a bad thing. He opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. There are options that might interest you: advanced placement courses at the university, independent study programs, competitions that could lead to scholarships. Maya started to shake her head, but Mr. Richards held up a hand. Just look at the information, think about it, talk to your parents. You don't have to decide anything today. He passed her the folder, which Maya reluctantly accepted. In the meantime, Mr. Richards continued, I won't force you to reveal more than you're comfortable with in class, but I won't accept deliberate underperformance either. We'll find a middle ground. Maya nodded slowly. It wasn't what she had hoped for, but it was better than she had feared. Thank you, she said, rising to leave. Maya, Mr. Richards called as she reached the door. She turned back to look at him. For what it's worth, I think you'll find that many people will surprise you. Not everyone will react the way they did at your old school. Maya gave him a small, skeptical smile. Maybe, she said, though she didn't believe it. As she walked home through the park, the folder tucked safely in her backpack, Maya tried to imagine a future where she didn't have to hide, where her abilities were simply accepted as part of who she was. It was hard to picture, but for the first time in a long while, it didn't seem completely impossible either. The classroom fell into complete silence as Maya worked through the complex equation on the whiteboard. The only sounds were the squeak of the marker against the smooth surface and the soft ticking of the clock above the door. Every eye in the room was fixed on her back as she moved methodically from left to right, filling the board with symbols and numbers that most of the students had never seen before. Maya's hand moved with growing confidence as the initial shock and embarrassment faded away. Replaced by the familiar comfort of mathematics, this was her world, the place where everything made sense, where patterns emerged from chaos and beauty resided in logic. For the first time in 2 years, she wasn't hiding. She was vaguely aware of Mr. Richards standing to her right, his arms folded across his chest, his expression shifting from smug certainty to confusion and then to something else entirely. She could feel the weight of her classmates' stares, could almost hear their thoughts. Surprise, disbelief, maybe even admiration from some. But none of that mattered now. All that existed was the problem before her and the elegant solution, unfolding beneath her fingers. Time seemed to stretch and compress simultaneously. What felt like both seconds and hours passed as Maya implemented mathematical techniques that weren't covered in their textbook, methods she had learned from university-level courses she'd studied on her own late at night when the house was quiet, and she could immerse herself fully in the problems that challenged and delighted her. When she reached a particularly tricky section involving a substitution that would simplify the next steps, Maya hesitated briefly. She glanced over her shoulder at Mr. Richards, whose eyes had narrowed as he followed her work with intense concentration. This part requires a special substitution, she explained, her voice stronger now, almost forgetting her audience as she slipped into teacher mode. If we let you equal this expression here, she wrote it on the board, then the differential transforms into a more standard form that's easier to solve. Mr. Richards nodded slowly, his brow furrowed as he processed her approach. Several students in the front row leaned forward, trying to make sense of what they were witnessing. In the back, a few had given up entirely, clearly lost in the advanced mathematics but still captivated by the unusual scene playing out before them. Maya continued, the marker dancing across the board as she applied techniques that professional mathematicians would recognize and appreciate. When she reached a point where multiple approaches were possible, she paused again. There are actually 2 ways to proceed from here, she said, tapping the marker against her palm thoughtfully. The standard approach would be to continue with this method, but there's an alternative that's more elegant. Without waiting for a response, she sectioned off a portion of the remaining board space and began to demonstrate the second approach. This was something she had discovered on her own while working through problems late one night, a shortcut that combined several steps into one intuitive leap. It wasn't in any of her textbooks. It was purely her own insight. By recognizing this pattern here, she circled a section of the equation, we can apply a transformation that essentially collapses these three steps into one. It's similar to how we might factor a complex polynomial if we spot the right structure. The classroom remained utterly silent as Maya completed both solution paths, proving that they arrived at the same answer. When she finally placed the marker down and stepped back to survey her work, she felt a strange mixture of emotions. Pride in what she had accomplished, relief at having finished, and a growing anxiety about what would come next. She turned slowly to face the class, her cheeks flushed with a combination of concentration and the uncomfortable awareness that she had just exposed herself completely. 28 pairs of eyes stared back at her with expressions ranging from confusion to awe. In the front row, Zach's mouth hung slightly open, his usual confidence replaced by stunned disbelief. Mr. Richards cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention. He approached the board slowly, examining Maya's work with careful scrutiny. She watched nervously as his finger traced the steps of her solution, pausing occasionally at key points, nodding almost imperceptibly. After what felt like an eternity, he turned to face the class. "Ms. Thompson's solution is correct," he announced, his voice carrying a note of surprise that he couldn't quite hide. "Both approaches are mathematically sound, and the alternative method she's demonstrated is indeed more efficient than the standard technique." He turned to Maya, studying her with new eyes. The smugness was gone from his expression, replaced by something Maya couldn't quite read. Respect, perhaps, or curiosity. "Where did you learn this approach?" he asked, gesturing to her alternative solution. Maya shifted uncomfortably under his gaze. "I just figured it out," she admitted quietly. "When I was working on similar problems at home." "You figured it out," Mr. Richards repeated, his eyebrows rising. "On your own." She nodded, wishing she could disappear back to her seat or, better yet, out of the classroom entirely. "That's—" Mr. Richards seemed to search for the right word. "That's remarkable, Ms. Thompson." The bell rang suddenly, making several students jump. The spell of silence was broken as chairs scraped against the floor, and the rustle of papers filled the room. But unlike the usual rush for the door, most students lingered, watching the exchange between Maya and their teacher with undisguised interest. "You may return to your seat, Ms. Thompson," Mr. Richards said, turning to erase a portion of the board. "Class dismissed. Please read section 4.3 for tomorrow." Maya walked back to her desk on unsteady legs, feeling as if she'd just run a marathon. Her heart was still racing, her palms damp with nervous sweat. She gathered her things quickly, hoping to escape before anyone could approach her. "Maya," a voice said beside her. She looked up to find Lena staring at her with wide eyes. "That was amazing. How did you do that?" Before Maya could respond, another voice cut in. "Yeah, when did you get so smart?" This came from Tyler, a boy who sat 2 rows over and had never spoken to her before. More students were gathering around her desk now, their expressions curious, their questions coming faster than she could process them. "Have you always been able to do stuff like that? Are you some kind of genius? Can you help me with my homework?" The attention was overwhelming, pressing in on her from all sides like a physical weight. This was exactly what she had feared, exactly what she had been trying to avoid for 2 years. Maya felt her chest tighten, her breathing becoming shallow as panic began to set in. "I need to get to my next class," she mumbled, pushing past the crowd of curious classmates. She kept her head down as she hurried into the hallway, but she could feel stares following her, could hear whispers spreading like ripples in a pond. "Did you see what just happened in Richard's class? That quiet girl in the back, she's actually some kind of math prodigy. I heard she solved a problem even Richards couldn't do." Maya quickened her pace, seeking refuge in the girls' bathroom. She pushed through the door and leaned against the sink, her hands gripping the cool porcelain as she tried to steady her breathing. In the mirror, her reflection looked back at her. Same dark hair, same brown eyes, same Maya as always. But somehow everything had changed in the span of 15 minutes. The door swung open and Lena appeared, her expression concerned. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked, letting the door close behind her. Maya nodded automatically, then shook her head. I don't know, she admitted. Lena leaned against the adjacent sink. What happened back there? That was incredible, Maya. Why? Have you been hiding that you're so good at math? Maya stared at the sink drain, watching a drop of water slowly make its way down the porcelain. It's complicated. Try me, Lena said simply. Maybe it was the events of the last hour, or maybe it was just that Maya was tired of carrying her secret, alone. But something made her decide to trust Lena with the truth. At my old school, I used to answer all the questions, show all my work, get perfect scores on everything, she began, her voice quiet. At first, teachers loved it. They called me gifted, gave me special projects, entered me in competitions. That sounds pretty good, Lena observed. Maya gave a humorless laugh. It wasn't. The other kids started calling me teacher's pet and know-it-all. No one wanted to work with me on group projects because they said I made them feel stupid. No one wanted to sit with me at lunch. Eventually, they started leaving notes in my locker, really mean stuff about how no one liked me, how I should just disappear. Lena's expression softened. That's awful. Yeah, well? Maya shrugged, trying to pretend it didn't still hurt to remember. When we moved here, I decided to try something different. I figured out exactly how well to do to get decent grades without standing out. And it worked. For 2 years it worked. She sighed heavily. Until today. So what now? Lena asked after a moment of silence. Maya shook her head. I don't know. Go back to being invisible if that's even possible anymore. Or, Lena suggested carefully, you could just be yourself. Your real self. The second bell rang, signaling that they were now officially late for their next class. Neither girl moved. It's not that simple, Maya said finally. Maybe it is, Lena countered. Look, not everyone is like those kids at your old school. Some people might actually think what you can do is pretty cool. Maya looked at her skeptically. Like who? Like me, for starters, Lena said with a small smile. And probably others too, if you give them a chance. Maya wasn't convinced, but she appreciated Lena's attempt to make her feel better. We should get to class, she said, straightening up and adjusting her backpack. As they left the bathroom, Lena touched her arm lightly. Just think about it, okay? You shouldn't have to hide who you are. The rest of the day passed in a blur of classes, whispers and curious glances. By the time the final bell rang, Maya felt exhausted, as if she'd been running a marathon all day. She was gathering books from her locker when Mr. Richards appeared beside her. Ms. Thompson, he said, his voice quieter than usual. Do you have a moment? Maya nodded resignedly, closing her locker. She had been expecting this, some kind of follow-up to the morning's events. I'd like to speak with you in my classroom, if that's all right. They walked in silence through the rapidly emptying hallways. Inside the classroom, Mr. Richards gestured for her to take a seat, then settled into his own chair behind the desk. I've been thinking about what happened this morning, he began, folding his hands on the desk, and I owe you an apology. Maya blinked in surprise. This was not what she had expected. An apology? She repeated. Mr. Richards nodded, looking somewhat uncomfortable. My behavior was unprofessional. I put you on the spot in a way that was inappropriate, and for that I am sorry. Maya stared at him, unsure how to respond. In all her scenarios of how this conversation might go, Mr. Richards apologizing had never crossed her mind. I had noticed inconsistencies in your work, he continued, patterns in your mistakes that seemed too deliberate to be coincidental. I suspected you were holding back, but I handled it poorly. He removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. I'm afraid my pride got the better of me. Your pride? Maya echoed, confused. Mr. Richards replaced his glasses, his expression wry. I've been teaching for nearly 3 decades, Ms. Thompson. I pride myself on identifying talent in my students, on challenging them appropriately. The thought that I had missed something so significant. He shook his head. But that's no excuse for embarrassing you in front of your peers. Maya was still processing this unexpected turn when Mr. Richards asked, "How long have you been studying advanced mathematics on your own?" She hesitated, then decided there was no point in hiding anymore. "Since I was 12, I guess. That's when I started reading college textbooks." Mr. Richards whistled softly. "And your work this morning, the alternative approach you demonstrated, was that something you learned from a textbook as well?" Maya shook her head. "No, I came up with that on my own. It seemed more efficient." "It is more efficient," Mr. Richards agreed. "It's also highly original. I've never seen that particular approach before, and I have a master's degree in applied mathematics." Maya felt a small flicker of pride at his words, quickly followed by the familiar anxiety about standing out. "Please don't make a big deal about this," she said quietly. Mr. Richards studied her for a long moment. "Why have you been hiding your abilities, Maya?" The use of her first name, unusual for him, made the question seem more personal. Maya considered deflecting but found herself answering honestly instead. "Because being different isn't fun," she said simply. "Because I tried being the smart kid before and all it got me was isolation and bullying. Because sometimes fitting in matters more than being recognized for what you can do." Mr. Richards nodded slowly, a thoughtful expression on his face. "I understand that," he said, surprising her again. "The desire to belong is powerful, especially at your age. But I wonder if you've considered the cost of hiding who you truly are." Maya frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean that pretending to be less than you are requires constant vigilance. It's exhausting, and it prevents you from developing your considerable gifts to their full potential." He leaned forward slightly. "There's a quote I've always appreciated. Your playing small does not serve the world." Maya remained silent, turning his words over in her mind. "I won't presume to tell you what to do," Mr. Richards continued, "but I would like to offer you some options to consider." He opened a drawer and removed a folder, which he slid across the desk toward her. "These are some programs that might interest you. Advanced placement courses at the local university, online classes from MIT and Stanford, competitions that offer significant scholarships." Maya made no move to take the folder. "I don't want special treatment," she said firmly. "It's not special treatment to provide appropriate challenges for a student at your level," Mr. Richards countered. "Would you expect a concert pianist to practice only Mary Had a Little Lamb simply because that's what her peers are playing?" The analogy made Maya smile despite herself. "I'm hardly a concert pianist." "In mathematics you may well be," Mr. Richards said seriously. "Your solution this morning demonstrated not just knowledge but true insight. That's rare, even among professional mathematicians." He pushed the folder a little closer to her. "Just look through these materials. Talk to your parents. Think about what you want your future to look like. You don't have to decide anything immediately." After a moment's hesitation, Maya reached out and took the folder. "Okay," she agreed. "I'll think about it." Mr. Richards nodded, looking satisfied. "That's all I ask." He glanced at the clock. "I've kept you late enough, unless you have any questions for me." Maya stood, tucking the folder into her backpack. "Not right now," she said. Then, after a brief pause, "Thank you. For the apology, and for seeing me, I guess. It's my job to see my students, Ms. Thompson," Mr. Richards replied with a small smile, "even when they're trying very hard not to be seen." As Maya left the classroom and walked through the now empty hallways, she felt strangely lighter, as if a weight she had been carrying for years had been partially lifted. The day had not gone as she had planned, far from it, but perhaps that wasn't entirely a bad thing. Outside, the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the school grounds. Maya spotted Lena waiting by the bike rack, scrolling through her phone. She looked up as Maya approached, her expression brightening. "Hey, I was wondering if you'd disappeared," she said. "Everything okay?" Maya considered the question for a moment. "I think so," she said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. "Mr. Richards apologized, actually." Lena's eyebrows shot up. "Richards?" Apologized? Are we talking about the same Mr. Richards who made Tyler cry last semester when he couldn't factor a quadratic? Maya laughed, the sound strange and welcome after such a tense day. The very same. He gave me some information about programs for students who need more advanced work. She patted her backpack where the folder rested. Are you going to check them out? Lena asked as they began walking toward the street. I don't know yet, Maya admitted. It's a lot to think about. They walked in companionable silence for a block before Lena spoke again. For what it's worth, I think you should go for it. You have this amazing gift. It seems a shame to hide it. Maya glanced at her, struck by the genuine encouragement in her voice. There was no jealousy there, no resentment, just simple support from someone who might actually be a friend. Thanks, she said softly. I'll think about it. As they reached the corner where their paths would diverge, Lena hesitated. Do you want to come over to my house? We could look through that stuff together if you want. Plus, my mom made cookies last night and they're really good. The invitation was casual, but to Maya, it felt significant. This was the first time anyone from Westfield High had invited her to their home. It was a small thing, perhaps, but it represented something she had missed for a long time. Connection, acceptance. I'd like that, she said, a genuine smile spreading across her face. I'd like that a lot. As they changed direction and headed toward Lena's house, Maya felt something unfamiliar stirring inside her. A cautious hope that maybe, just maybe, she could find a way to be herself without losing everything else that mattered. The path forward wasn't clear yet, but for the first time in a long while, she was actually looking forward to seeing where it might lead. Mr. Richards stood speechless, at the front of the classroom, his eyes moving methodically over the equations Maya had written on the board. The silence stretched uncomfortably as he traced each step of her solution, occasionally nodding to himself. The rest of the class remained frozen in a tableau of disbelief, all eyes darting between their teacher and the girl who had just solved a problem far beyond their curriculum. Maya stood awkwardly by the whiteboard, marker still in hand, wishing she could disappear. Her heart pounded so loudly she was certain everyone could hear it. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The clock ticked steadily on the wall, and still Mr. Richards said nothing. Finally, he cleared his throat. This is correct, he said, his voice carrying a note of surprise he couldn't quite mask. Both your primary solution and the alternative approach you've demonstrated are mathematically sound. He turned to face the class, adjusting his glasses as if seeing them all for the first time. In fact, the second method Ms. Thompson has shown us is actually more elegant than the standard approach. It's not one I've seen before in quite this application. A murmur rippled through the classroom. In the front row, Zach shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his usual confidence visibly shaken. Behind him, other students exchanged glances, some confused, some impressed, some simply baffled by what they had just witnessed. You may return to your seat, Ms. Thompson, Mr. Richards said, his tone more subdued than usual. Maya placed the marker carefully on the tray and walked back to her desk, eyes fixed on the floor. She could feel the stares following her, boring into her back with the heat of newfound curiosity. This was exactly what she had feared, exactly what she had worked so hard to avoid. She was exposed now, her carefully constructed normalcy shattered. In 15 minutes of equations. The bell rang, saving her from the immediate aftermath. Students gathered their things, many casting glances in her direction as they filed out of the classroom. A few looked like they wanted to approach her, but something in her rigid posture kept them at bay. Ms. Thompson, Mr. Richards called as she shouldered her backpack. A word, please. Maya's stomach clenched. Here it comes, she thought. The questions, the special assignments, the unwanted attention, everything she had managed to avoid for 2 years. She approached his desk reluctantly, bracing herself for what would follow. I'll write you a pass for your next class, Mr. Richards said, reaching for a pad of hall passes. This may take a few minutes. He finished writing and handed it to her, then leaned back in his chair, studying her with new eyes. How long? He asked simply. Maya shifted her weight from one foot to the other. How long what? How long have you been hiding your mathematical abilities? She hesitated, weighing her options. Denial seemed pointless now. Since I came to Westfield, she admitted. About 2 years. Mr. Richards nodded slowly, as if confirming a suspicion. And before that? Before that, I didn't hide, Maya said quietly. And it was difficult. Difficult how? Maya stared at a point just past his shoulder, unwilling to meet his gaze. Kids don't like it when someone's different, especially when that difference makes them feel. She struggled to find the right word. Inadequate, I guess. Understanding dawned in Mr. Richards's eyes. You were bullied. It wasn't a question, but Maya nodded anyway. When we moved here, I decided it would be easier to just blend in, be normal. So you've been deliberately underperforming in my class. Again, not a question. Yes, she admitted. I figured out exactly how many problems to miss on each assignment, to maintain a B average. Nothing remarkable, but not bad enough to cause concern. Mr. Richards removed his glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose. Maya, he said, using her first name for the first time. Do you have any idea what level of mathematics you're actually capable of understanding? She shrugged uncomfortably. I've been working through some college textbooks at home. Multivariable, calculus, differential equations, some linear algebra. On your own? Without any guidance? There are good resources online, she said. Video lectures from MIT and Stanford. Forums where you can ask questions. Mr. Richards replaced his glasses and leaned forward, his expression suddenly intense. What you did today, that alternative solution approach, where did you learn that? Maya hesitated. I didn't exactly. I just saw the pattern and realized there was a more direct way to solve it. You developed that method yourself? His eyebrows rose above his glasses. I guess so, she said, uncomfortable with his growing interest. It seemed obvious once I looked at the structure of the equation. Mr. Richards shook his head slightly, a mixture of disbelief and something like admiration crossing his features. Maya, what you demonstrated today goes beyond merely being good at math. The ability to see new approaches, to recognize patterns and relationships that others miss, that's not something that can be taught. That's mathematical insight, and it's rare, even among professionals in the field. Maya didn't know how to respond. Part of her, a part she had suppressed for 2 years, glowed with pride at his words. But another part, the part that remembered, whispered insults and lonely lunch tables, wanted to reject his praise, to insist she was nothing special. I need to get to my next class, she said instead. Mr. Richards nodded, but he wasn't finished. I'd like to speak with you more about this. Perhaps after school. There are some opportunities I think you should consider. Maya's heart sank. Here it was. The special treatment, the singling out, everything she had been avoiding. I don't want to join the math team, she said quickly, or enter any competitions or skip grades. I just want to be a normal student. Normal students don't develop novel approaches to advanced differential equations, Mr. Richards pointed out gently. And pretending to be less than you are isn't doing anyone any favors, least of all yourself. Before Maya could respond, the door opened and students for the next period began filtering in. Mr. Richards glanced at the clock. After school, he said again, more firmly this time. We'll continue this conversation then. Maya nodded reluctantly and escaped into the hallway, already late for her next class. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. She went through the motions in her other classes, taking notes and answering questions when called upon, but her mind was elsewhere. By lunchtime, word had spread throughout the sophomore class about what had happened in Mr. Richards' room. Maya could feel the curious stares as she made her way to the cafeteria, could hear the whispers that followed in her wake. That's her, the girl who solved the impossible equation. I heard she's some kind of math genius. No way, she's always been totally average. She spotted Lena at their usual table and made her way over, trying to ignore the sudden hush that fell as she passed a group of students from her math class. Hey, Lena greeted her, pushing a carton of chocolate milk in her direction. I got an extra one. Thanks, Maya said, settling onto the bench. She waited for the questions to begin, for Lena to ask about what had happened in math class, but her friend merely continued eating her sandwich, seemingly content with their usual, comfortable silence. After a few moments, Maya relaxed slightly. Maybe this wouldn't be as bad as she feared. Maybe. So, said a voice behind her. You've been holding out on us, huh? Maya turned to find Zach standing there, his lunch tray in hand, an unreadable expression on his face. Her stomach tightened. As the acknowledged math star of their grade, Zach had the most to lose from her sudden emergence. Mind if I sit? He asked, not waiting for an answer before sliding onto the bench across from them. He set his tray down and leaned forward slightly. That thing you did in Richard's class today, that was pretty impressive. Maya pushed her food around her plate, not meeting his eyes. It wasn't a big deal. Not a big deal, Zach repeated incredulously. You solved a graduate-level differential equation using a method Richards had never seen before. That's definitely a big deal. Maya said nothing, wishing he would just go away. Beside her, Lena shifted slightly, a subtle movement that somehow conveyed support. Look, Zach continued, his voice dropping a notch. I've been the math guy around here for 3 years. I'm used to being the one with all the answers. But what you did today... He shook his head, a reluctant smile forming. That was next level. Maya glanced up, surprised by his tone. She had expected resentment, maybe even hostility, but instead found what appeared to be genuine admiration. Thanks, she said cautiously. So why have you been hiding it? Zach asked. Bluntly. You could have been acing every test, winning competitions, getting all kinds of recognition. Why pretend to be average? The question hung in the air between them, and Maya found herself unexpectedly considering a real answer. Before she could respond, however, the bell rang, signaling the end of lunch period. Saved by the bell? Lena murmured beside her, gathering her things. Zach stood, picking up his tray. Think about joining the math team, he said. We could use someone like you. He hesitated, then added with a wry smile, even if it means I might not always be the star anymore. As he walked away, Lena turned to Maya with raised eyebrows. That was unexpected. Maya nodded, equally surprised. I thought he'd be upset about the competition. Maybe he cares more about math than about being the best, Lena suggested, shouldering her backpack. The thought stayed with Maya throughout her afternoon classes. She had been so certain that revealing her abilities would lead to the same painful isolation she had experienced before, but so far, the reactions had been different than she expected. Mr. Richards had seemed more impressed than angry about her deception. Zach had offered respect rather than resentment. Even Lena, who had every reason to feel betrayed by Maya's long-standing pretense, had shown nothing but steady support. By the time the final bell rang, Maya's certainty had begun to waver. Maybe Westfield was different from her previous school. Maybe she had been hiding unnecessarily all this time. Or maybe, whispered a cautious voice in her head, the real backlash just hasn't started yet. She made her way to Mr. Richards's classroom, her steps heavy with reluctance. The door was ajar and she knocked lightly before entering. Mr. Richards was at his desk, grading papers, but he looked up immediately at her entrance. Ah, Ms. Thompson, please, come in and close the door. Maya did as he asked, then stood awkwardly near the front of the room, unsure whether to take a seat. Please, Mr. Richards said, gesturing to a desk in the front row. This won't take long. She sat, placing her backpack on the floor beside her, and waited. I've been thinking about our conversation this morning, Mr. Richards began, removing his glasses and setting them on the desk. Without them, his face looked somehow more human, less the stern teacher and more a person trying to understand a puzzling situation. And I realize that I may have contributed to your discomfort. Maya blinked, caught off guard by this unexpected direction. What do you mean? She asked. Mr. Richards sighed, leaning back in his chair. I put you on the spot today, deliberately challenging you with a problem far beyond the curriculum. I intended To prove that you were holding back, but I didn't consider how embarrassing that would be for you. He met her eyes directly. I owe you an apology for that. Of all the scenarios Maya had imagined for this meeting, Mr. Richards apologizing had never crossed her mind. She didn't know how to respond. It's okay, she said finally. No, it's not, he countered. It was unprofessional and unkind. I allowed my frustration, and yes, my pride, to cloud my judgment. Your pride? Maya echoed, confused. I've been teaching for 27 years, Mr. Richards explained. I pride myself on recognizing talent in my students, on challenging them, appropriately. The thought that I had completely misjudged your abilities for nearly 2 years. He shook his head. Well, it wounded my professional ego, I suppose. But that's no excuse. Maya studied him, seeing him in a new light. It had never occurred to her that teachers might have their own insecurities, their own pride in their work. I understand, she said, and found that she meant it. Mr. Richards nodded, seeming relieved by her acceptance. That said, we still need to discuss what happens going forward. Maya tensed again. What do you mean? I mean that continuing to pretend you're an average math student would be doing a disservice to both of us, he said frankly. But I also understand your concerns about standing out too much. He opened a drawer and removed a folder, which he placed on the desk between them. I've put together some information about options that might interest you. Advanced placement courses at the university, independent study programs, competitions that could lead to significant scholarships. Maya made no move to take the folder. I don't want special treatment, she said quietly. It's not special treatment to provide appropriate challenges for a student at your level, Mr. Richards countered. Would you expect a concert pianist to practice only Mary Had a Little Lamb simply because that's what their peers are playing? The analogy made Maya smile despite herself. I'm hardly a concert pianist. In mathematics, you may well be, Mr. Richards said seriously. What you demonstrated today wasn't just knowledge, Maya. It was true mathematical insight, the ability to see patterns and connections that others miss. That's rare, even among professional mathematicians. He pushed the folder a little closer, to her. I'm not asking you to make any decisions right now. Just look through these materials. Talk to your parents. Think about what you want your future to look like. After a moment's hesitation, Maya reached out and took the folder. Okay, she agreed. I'll think about it. Mr. Richards nodded, looking satisfied. That's all I ask. He glanced at the clock. I've kept you late enough, unless you have any questions for me? Maya shook her head and stood, tucking the folder into her backpack. As she reached the door, Mr. Richards called after her. Maya. She turned back to look at him. For what it's worth, he said, I think you'll find that many people will surprise you. Not everyone will react the way they did at your old school. Maya gave him a small, skeptical smile. Maybe, she said, though she didn't entirely believe it. The hallways were nearly empty as she made her way to her locker. Most students had already left for the day, eager to escape the confines of school. Maya moved slowly, lost in thought, replaying the events of the day in her mind. Hey, a voice called, breaking into her reverie. Maya, wait up. She turned to see Lena hurrying toward her, slightly out of breath. I thought you'd already left, Lena said, falling into step beside her. I had to talk to Mr. Richards, Maya explained. How'd that go? Weird, actually. He apologized to me. Lena's eyebrows shot up. Richards? Apologized? Are we talking about the same Mr. Richards who made Tyler cry last semester when he couldn't factor a quadratic? Maya laughed, the sound strange and welcome after such a tense day. The very same. She patted her backpack. He gave me some information about programs for students who need more advanced work. Are you going to check them out? Lena asked as they pushed through the main doors and stepped out into the afternoon sunlight. I don't know yet, Maya admitted. It's a lot to think about. They walked in companionable silence for a block before Lena spoke again. For what it's worth, I think you should go for it. You have this amazing gift, it seems a shame to hide it. Maya glanced at her, struck by the genuine encouragement in her voice. There was no jealousy there, no resentment, just simple support from someone who might actually be a friend. Thanks, she said softly. I'll think about it. As they reached the corner where their paths would diverge, Lena hesitated. Do you want to come over to my house? We could look through that stuff together if you want. Plus, my mom made cookies last night and they're really good. The invitation was casual, but to Maya it felt significant. This was the first time anyone from Westfield High had invited her to their home. It was a small thing, perhaps, but it represented something she had missed for a long time. Connection, acceptance. I'd like that, she said, a genuine smile spreading across her face. I'd like that a lot. They changed direction, heading toward Lena's house instead. As they walked, Maya found herself talking more freely than she had in years, telling Lena about the math problems she worked on at night, the online forums where she discussed advanced concepts with college students and professors who had no idea she was only 16. There's this one professor from MIT who's been helping me with a particularly tricky area of topology, she explained, her eyes lighting up with genuine enthusiasm. He thinks I'm a graduate student at UCLA. He'd probably die of shock if he knew I haven't even finished high school yet. Lena laughed, shaking her head in amazement. That's incredible, Maya. You've been living this whole secret life and none of us had any idea. That was kind of the point, Maya reminded her, but there was no bitterness in her tone now. They reached Lena's house, a modest two-story with a small front garden where late-blooming flowers still added splashes of color. Inside, the house was warm and inviting, with the promised cookies cooling on a rack in the kitchen. Mom won't be home for another hour, Lena explained, grabbing plates and glasses. Dad's on a business trip this week. They settled at the kitchen table with cookies and milk, and Maya finally opened the folder Mr. Richards had given her. Inside were brochures for various programs, a special mathematics track at the local university, where high school students could take advanced courses for dual credit, online courses from prestigious institutions, information about mathematics, competitions with substantial scholarship prizes. This one looks interesting, Lena said, pointing to a flyer about a summer research program at MIT. You'd get to work with actual mathematicians on real research. Maya scanned the description. Her interest piqued despite her reservations. The program was highly selective, accepting only 20 high school students nationwide each year. Applicants had to submit a research proposal along with recommendations from teachers. The application deadline is next month, she noted, a flutter of excitement mixing with anxiety in her stomach. You should totally apply, Lena urged. With what you can do, they'd be crazy not to accept you? Maya wasn't so sure. There are probably lots of really talented students who apply, and I don't have much of a track record. I've been hiding what I can do, remember? But now Mr. Richards knows, Lena pointed out. And after today, I bet he'd write you an amazing recommendation letter. Maya hesitated, turning the possibility over in her mind. The program did sound amazing. 6 weeks at MIT, working alongside leading mathematicians, exploring problems that might actually contribute to the field she loved. Maybe, she said finally. I'll have to talk to my parents about it. What do you think they'll say? Lena asked, reaching for another cookie. Maya considered the question. They've always been supportive of my interest in math, even though they don't really understand it. My dad works at the auto plant and my mom's a nurse's aide. They want me to have opportunities they didn't have. They continued looking through the materials, discussing the pros and cons of each option. For the first time, Maya allowed herself to imagine a future where she didn't have to hide her abilities, where she could pursue her passion for mathematics openly, without fear of rejection or isolation. As the afternoon light began to fade, casting long shadows across the kitchen table, Maya gathered the papers back into the folder. I should probably head home, she said reluctantly. My parents will be wondering where I am. Lena walked her to the door. Thanks for sharing all this with me, she said, gesturing to the folder. And for trusting me with the truth about your math superpowers. Maya laughed. They're hardly superpowers, says the girl who solved an equation that stumped our teacher. Lena countered with a grin. Seriously, though, I'm glad you don't have to hide that part of yourself anymore. At least not with me. The simple acceptance in her words warmed Maya more than she could express. Thanks for being so cool about it, she said. I was afraid that once people knew, everything would change. Some things might change, Lena acknowledged, but that doesn't mean they'll change for the worse. As Maya walked home through the gathering dusk, she found herself considering Lena's words. Perhaps she had been too quick to assume that her experience at her previous school would be repeated. At Westfield, perhaps as both Lena and Mr. Richards had suggested, it was time to give people a chance to surprise her. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating, like standing at the edge of a high dive, scared to jump, but knowing that the sensation of flying might be worth the fear. By the time she reached her modest house with its small front porch and worn welcome mat, Maya had made a decision. She wouldn't apply for every opportunity in the folder. That would be too much, too fast. But the MIT summer program, that was worth the risk. If she was accepted, it would mean 6 weeks away from Westfield, exploring mathematics at a level she had only dreamed of. And if she wasn't accepted, well, she would have lost nothing but a bit of time and maybe some pride. As she pushed open her front door and called out a greeting to her parents, Maya felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time, a sense of possibility, of doors opening rather than closing. The day had begun with her worst fear coming true, with her carefully maintained disguise being stripped away. But it was ending with unexpected acceptance, with an apology she never anticipated, with the first real friendship she'd had in years. Maybe, just maybe, being herself wouldn't be as disastrous as she had feared. Maybe, in fact, it was the only way to discover what she could truly become. Word spread quickly through the hallways of Westfield High. By the following morning, it seemed everyone had heard about what happened in Mr. Richards' advanced mathematics class. Maya felt the stares and whispers follow her as she made her way to her locker, her shoulders hunched slightly as if she could physically deflect the attention. There she is, a voice murmured as she passed a group of seniors. The math genius, who solved Richard's impossible equation. Maya kept her head down, focusing on the combination of her lock, turning the dial with trembling fingers. She had barely slept the night before, her mind replaying the events of yesterday on an endless loop, imagining all the ways her school life would change now that her secret was out. She had talked with her parents about everything, Mr. Richards' challenge, her solution, his apology, and the folder of opportunities he had given her. They had been supportive but concerned, remembering how difficult things had been for her before. Just remember, honey, her mother had said, squeezing her, hand across the kitchen table. No matter what happens, you have us always. The memory gave her strength as she gathered her books for first period. She was so focused on keeping her breathing steady that she didn't notice Zach approach until he was standing right beside her. Hey, he said, leaning against the locker, next to hers. Ready for the math quiz today? Maya blinked in surprise, both at his presence and the normalcy of his question. Yeah, I guess so. Zach grinned. That's probably the understatement of the year. He shifted his backpack to his other shoulder, his expression turning more serious. Look, I wanted to tell you that what you did yesterday was really impressive, and I've been thinking about what you said at lunch, about why you've been hiding your abilities. Maya tensed, waiting for the other shoe to drop. I get it, he continued, surprising her again. People can be pretty awful when someone stands out, but I think you're selling everyone here short, including yourself. He straightened up, adjusting his glasses. Anyway, I talked to the math team yesterday. We meet Tuesdays and Thursdays, after school. We'd love to have you join us if you want. Before Maya could formulate a response, he added, No pressure, just think about it, and walked away, leaving her staring after him in confusion. The interaction left her off balance, not matching any of the scenarios she had imagined. Where was the resentment, the jealousy, the pointed questions about why she had been pretending to be average all this time? What did Zach want? Lena asked, appearing beside her with perfect timing as always. Maya shook her head slightly. To invite me to join the math team, apparently. Lena's eyebrows rose. Really? That's unexpectedly decent of him, right? Maya closed her locker. I don't get it. He's supposed to be upset that I might take his spot as the math star. Maybe he cares more about having a strong team than being the best individual, Lena suggested as they walked toward their first class. Or maybe he's just not as insecure as you expected. The thought stayed with Maya throughout the morning. By lunchtime, she had fielded several more unexpected interactions. A sophomore she barely knew asking for help with a difficult homework problem. A girl from her English class mentioning that her older brother was studying mathematics at her college and loved it. Even a nod of acknowledgement from a teacher who had never seemed to notice her before. It was confusing, this new visibility. Part of her still wanted to shrink back into anonymity, to find a way to undo yesterday's revelation. But another part, a part that had been silenced for too long, was cautiously enjoying the recognition of her true abilities. When she entered Mr. Richards' class that afternoon, the room fell momentarily silent before conversations resumed, at a slightly lower volume. Maya made her way to her usual seat in the back, feeling unusually self-conscious. All right, settle down, Mr. Richards called as the bell rang. He surveyed the room, his gaze pausing briefly on Maya before moving on. Today we'll be continuing our discussion of differential equations, building on what we started yesterday. He turned to the board and began writing, his precise handwriting filling the white space with symbols and numbers. Maya opened her notebook and started taking notes, but for the first time in 2 years, she didn't feel the need to hide her understanding. When Mr. Richards asked a question about a particular application of the formula they were studying, she raised her hand without hesitation. Ms. Thompson, he acknowledged, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. The equation can be used to model population growth over time, she answered confidently. It's particularly useful when resources are limited, which creates a natural ceiling for the population size. Mr. Richards nodded. Exactly right. This is what makes differential equations so powerful. Their ability to describe real-world phenomena mathematically. He turned back to the board, adding another example. Can anyone think of other applications? The class continued, and Maya found herself fully engaged for the first time in years, no longer holding back her questions or insights. When the bell rang, signaling the end of the period, she was almost disappointed. Ms. Thompson, Mr. Richards called as students began gathering their things. A moment, please. Maya approached his desk, wondering what he wanted now. Have you had a chance to look at the materials I gave you? He asked, straightening a stack of papers on his desk. Yes, she admitted. I was particularly interested in the MIT summer program. His eyebrows rose slightly, a look of approval crossing his face. An excellent choice. The application deadline is coming up, isn't it? Maya nodded. Next month. Well, if you decide to apply, I'd be happy to write you a recommendation letter. He hesitated, then added, and if you'd like some help preparing. Your application, my office hours are on Mondays and Wednesdays after school. The offer was made casually, but Maya recognized it for what it was. A genuine attempt to support her, to make up for his earlier misjudgment. Thank you, she said, meaning it. I might take you up on that. 2 weeks passed and slowly, life at Westfield High settled into a new normal. The initial flurry of interest in the math genius faded as students became accustomed to Maya's newly revealed abilities. She still felt occasional stares and heard whispers sometimes, but they no longer seemed threatening, more curious than malicious. After much consideration and several long talks with her parents, Maya had decided to apply for the MIT summer program. Mr. Richards had been true to his word, helping her craft a strong application and writing what he assured her was a glowing recommendation letter. They'd be fools not to accept you, he told her after reading her personal statement, which detailed her passion for mathematics and her hope to someday contribute to the field with original research. She had also, to her own surprise, begun attending math team meetings. The first time had been terrifying, walking into a room full of the school's most mathematically inclined students, all of whom now knew what she was capable of. But Zach had made a point of welcoming her, introducing her to everyone without making a big deal about her abilities. And gradually she had begun to feel comfortable there. Even more surprising was how much she enjoyed it. The camaraderie of working through difficult problems together, the satisfaction of contributing to team solutions, the friendly competitiveness that pushed everyone to improve. For the first time in years, Maya found herself among peers who understood her love of mathematics, who spoke the same language of equations and proofs that had been her private world for so long. The regional competition is next month, Zach mentioned one Thursday after practice. You should compete with us. Maya hesitated. Competitions meant attention, spotlights, pressure. I don't know. You'd help us win, he said matter-of-factly. And honestly, you might enjoy it. It's not just about solving problems. It's about solving them in creative ways, finding approaches no one else sees. He grinned. Which seems to be your specialty. The compliment warmed her and Maya found herself nodding. Okay, I'll think about it. As she walked home that evening, her mind was full of equations and strategies, already considering how she might approach the types of problems that appeared in math competitions. It was strange, this new freedom to think openly about mathematics, to discuss it with others, to let her passion show without fear. Strange, but also exhilarating. Her phone buzzed with a text from Lena. Coffee tomorrow after school? I want to hear all about math team. Maya smiled, typing back a quick agreement. Another unexpected development of the past 2 weeks had been the strengthening of her friendship with Lena. What had begun as a casual acquaintanceship had deepened into something real, built on Lena's unwavering support and genuine interest in Maya's life, both the mathematical and non-mathematical parts. The next afternoon, as they sat in a small cafe near school, cups of hot chocolate warming their hands against the autumn chill, Lena asked the question Maya had been pondering, herself. So do you regret it? Having everyone know what you can do? Maya considered for a moment, stirring her drink thoughtfully. Not as much as I thought I would, she admitted. It's still weird sometimes being visible after trying so hard not to be. But it's also, she searched for the right word. Freeing, I guess. I don't have to calculate exactly how many problems to miss on a quiz or worry about accidentally saying something too advanced. Plus, the math team loves you, Lena pointed out with a smile. Zach told me you solved a problem last week that none of them could figure out. Maya felt her cheeks warm slightly. It wasn't that impressive, I just approached it from a different angle. Which is exactly why they need you, Lena insisted, taking a sip of her chocolate. So, any word from MIT yet? Maya shook her head. The application deadline was just last week. They said notifications would go out in early April. They're going to accept you, Lena said with complete confidence. And then you'll spend the summer doing amazing math things with other math geniuses and probably discover some new theorem that will be named after you. Maya laughed, but the thought sent a little thrill through her. For the first time, such a future seemed possible. Not just a daydream, but a path she might actually walk. The winter months passed in a blur of classes, math team practices, and a growing sense of belonging that Maya hadn't experienced in years. The regional math competition came and went. Westfield placed second, with Maya scoring higher than anyone else on the team, a fact that Zach announced to everyone with surprising pride considering it had previously been his position at the top. We'll definitely win states with you on the team, he declared as they celebrated at a local pizza place afterward. Richards is going to be ecstatic. As if summoned by his name, Mr. Richards appeared in the doorway of the restaurant, scanning the room until he spotted their table in the corner. He made his way over, a manila envelope in his hand and an uncharacteristic smile on his face. I thought I might find you all here, he said, nodding to the team members. Congratulations on your performance today. Second place is impressive. We'll get first at states, Zach assured him. Maya nearly maxed out the individual score. Mr. Richard's smile widened. I'm not surprised. He turned to Maya, holding out the envelope. This came to the school office today. I thought you might want it immediately rather than waiting until Monday. Maya stared at the envelope, her heart suddenly pounding. The return address read, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Summer Research Program. With trembling fingers, she took it from him. "Open it," Lena urged, nearly bouncing in her seat with excitement. The restaurant seemed to fade away as Maya carefully broke the seal and pulled out a single sheet of paper. Her eyes scanned the first paragraph, hardly daring to believe what she was reading. "Dear Ms. Thompson," she read aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. "We are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted to the MIT Summer Research Program for high school students." The table erupted in cheers. Lena threw her arms around Maya in a tight hug, while Zach and the other math team members clapped and whistled. Even Mr. Richards looked genuinely pleased, his usual reserve softened by evident pride. "Full scholarship, too," Maya added as she continued reading, her voice shaking slightly. "They were impressed by my alternative approach to differential equations and want me to work with Professor Chen, who specializes in applied mathematics and mathematical modeling." "Professor Chen is a Fields Medal winner," Mr. Richards said, clearly impressed. "This is an extraordinary opportunity, Maya." As the celebration continued around her, Maya felt a sense of wonder wash over her. 6 months ago, she had been deliberately hiding her abilities, convinced that standing out would only lead to rejection and isolation. Now she was surrounded by people who not only accepted her true self but celebrated it. Friends who cheered her successes, a teacher who recognized and nurtured her talent, classmates who respected her abilities without treating her as a curiosity. The path ahead was still uncertain. The MIT program would be challenging in ways she couldn't yet imagine. There would be new people to meet, new judgment to face, new comparisons to others equally gifted in mathematics. But for the first time, Maya felt ready to face those challenges openly without hiding or diminishing herself. Later that evening, as she sat on the front porch swing at home, the acceptance letter still clutched in her hand, her father came out to join her. He settled beside her, the swing creaking gently beneath their combined weight. "Your mother told me the news," he said, his voice warm with pride. "MIT, huh? That's really something, Maya." "It's just for the summer," she reminded him, though the thought still sent a thrill through her. "For now," he agreed, a knowing smile crossing his weathered face. "But who knows where it might lead?" They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. "You know," her father said finally, "when you first told us you wanted to hide how good you were at math, your mother and I were worried. It didn't seem right, you dimming your light like that." He turned to look at her, his expression serious. "But we figured you had your reasons, and we trusted you to find your way." "I thought it was the only way to fit in," Maya admitted. "To be normal." Her father chuckled softly. "Maya, there's nothing normal about what you can do with numbers, and that's not a bad thing." He wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "I'm glad you don't have to hide anymore. I'm glad the world gets to see what we've always seen, how extraordinary you are." The simple sincerity in his words brought tears to Maya's eyes. She leaned into his embrace, grateful beyond words for his steady support through all the ups and downs of the past few years. "I'm still scared sometimes," she confessed quietly, "about standing out, about expectations, about failing." "That's normal," her father assured her. "Everyone feels that way sometimes, even people who aren't math geniuses." He squeezed her shoulder gently. "But you know what? I've never seen you back down from a challenge, not when it really matters. You'll face this one too, in your own way, at your own pace, and we'll be right here, cheering you on." As the evening deepened around them, Maya thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. From hiding in the shadows to standing reluctantly in the light. It hadn't been easy, and there had been moments when she had wished she could go back to the safety of anonymity. But sitting here now, with her father's arm around her and an MIT acceptance letter in her hand, she couldn't regret the path she had taken. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There would be forms to fill out for the summer program, preparations to make, fears to face. The regional newspaper wanted to do a story about the local math team's success, with a special focus on the hidden genius who had helped secure their second-place finish. The thought still made Maya's stomach twist with anxiety. But tonight, under a sky full of stars, she allowed herself to simply be proud of how far she had come. From a girl who deliberately failed math problems to hide her intelligence to a young woman headed to MIT for the summer, it was quite a journey. And it had all begun with that moment of truth in Mr. Richards's classroom, when she had finally allowed herself to shine. As if reading her thoughts, her father spoke again, his voice gentle in the darkness. "You know, Maya, sometimes the things we're most afraid of turn out to be the things that set us free." Maya nodded, understanding the truth of his words in a way she never could have 6 months ago. The equation that Mr. Richards had written on the board that day, the one meant to humiliate her, had instead become the catalyst for her transformation. By solving it, she had not only revealed her mathematical abilities but had begun to solve a much more personal equation: how to be fully herself in a world that sometimes seemed designed to make that difficult. It wasn't a perfect solution yet. There would be adjustments and refinements, moments of doubt and moments of triumph. But for the first time in years, Maya Thompson was moving forward with her whole self, no longer hiding, no longer pretending to be less than she was, and that she realized as she looked up at the vast expanse of stars above might be the most elegant solution of all.